The Mercedes S-Class cut through 6th Avenue like a blade through still water wipers struggling against October rain that turned Manhattan into watercolor. Inside the cabin, temperature held steady at 68 degrees, but no amount of climate control could address the ice forming behind the partition. Michael Carson's eyes tracked brake lights ahead while his passenger's voice climbed toward hysteria. 3 years driving this route. 3 years learning which lights turned yellow half a second early, which potholes to avoid, which lanes moved fastest during rush hour. 3 years of listening to conversations he wasn't supposed to hear. Victoria Brennan's reflection fractured across the rear-view mirror as she pressed her phone against her ear, mascara tracking dark rivers down her cheeks. The woman who'd graced Forbes 18 months ago, the tech titan who plays hardball, now looked like someone who'd forgotten how to win. Her voice cracked through the phone's speaker. "Richard, that's impossible. All 3 agencies, there has to be someone." Michael's knuckles went white against the steering wheel. He knew this tone. Desperation wearing executive armor. "The delegation lands in 3 hours. 3 hours, Richard." Victoria's free hand clawed through her hair, destroying what remained of the updo her stylist had spent 40 minutes perfecting. "This is a $950 million deal. If Takahashi and Singh walk away, we file Chapter 11 in 90 days. The jazz station played something mournful, a saxophone solo that belonged anywhere but here. Michael reached for the volume knob. His fingertips brushed chrome. "Don't touch my controls." The words landed like a physical blow. Michael's hand froze midair, hovering over the dashboard as if the air itself had solidified. Victoria's eyes found his in the mirror, sharp enough to draw blood. "You're the driver. Remember your place." The partition rose with a mechanical hiss, cutting her reflection in half, then into nothing. Michael's hand dropped to his lap. His jaw worked silently, grinding molars that had survived 54 years without cracking. The traffic light ahead turned yellow. Michael eased off the accelerator, bringing the Mercedes to a stop so smooth the coffee in Victoria's cup holder didn't ripple. Muscle memory. The kind of precision that came from repetition until your body performed without consulting your brain. His phone buzzed against his thigh. A text from Sarah, his daughter. "Preview Dad Hospital called about Grandma's treatment. They need $7,500 by Monday." Monday was 4 days away. Michael's thumb hovered over the banking app. The numbers stared back with arithmetic's cold indifference. Checking $3,247.18. Savings $58,392. The savings was supposed to last through Sarah's entire medical degree. 3 more years. He'd already done the math 100 times. It didn't work. It never worked. Behind the partition, Victoria's voice rose and fell like waves trying to erode granite. Michael had heard these calls before to investors, partners, her ex-husband's attorney. She always sounded like this when reality refused to bend to her will. The light turned green. Michael accelerated smooth as silk, while Sarah's text burned a hole in his pocket, like unspent currency. Georgetown, 1995. Professor Whitmore had stood at the lecture hall podium, arms crossed, and posed a question. "Your translator just collapsed during nuclear disarmament negotiations. The Russian delegation speaks no English. The American team speaks no Russian. You have 30 seconds to prevent World War III. Go." Michael had raised his hand. "Find someone bilingual who understands context well enough not to trigger an international incident." Whitmore had smiled. "And if you can't find that person, then you become that person." The memory tasted like dust. Becoming that person had required a PhD, a master's degree, 24 years at the State Department, and a career that ended with a form letter thanking him for his service. Budget cuts, position eliminated. Good luck. That was 3 years ago. 340 applications sent, overqualified for some, too old for the rest. Nobody wanted a 51-year-old diplomat in a world that worshipped 25-year-old disruptors. His phone buzzed again. Sarah. "Don't worry about the money. I can take next semester off work, save up." Michael's chest constricted. The next text arrived before he could respond. Johns Hopkins said they'd hold my spot for a year. It's fine, Dad. You've done enough. She didn't know. Sarah thought her father was a linguistics consultant working from home making enough to cover tuition and her grandmother's medical bills. She thought the monthly deposits came from research grants and translation contracts. She didn't know her father wore a chauffeur's cap and spent 8 hours daily driving a woman who called him the help. The Mercedes rolled through another intersection. Rain hammered the roof. Somewhere distant, a siren wailed. Victoria's voice penetrated the partition again, louder. "Mother, I don't have time for this." A pause. "Yes, I know you warned me about expanding too fast. You've mentioned it several times." Another pause. "I have to go." The partition lowered halfway. Victoria's face appeared in the gap, mascara-stained and furious. "I need coffee. Starbucks on 52nd. Michael nodded. "Yes, ma'am. And don't call me ma'am. It makes me sound ancient." The partition rose before he could respond. Michael changed lanes, already calculating the route. Right turn half a block, meter parking, if lucky loading zone, if not. Seoul 6 months ago. Victoria had used Google Translate for an email to Korean partners. She'd meant to write, "We look forward to productive partnership." What she'd actually sent translated closer to, "We expect you to obey." The deal collapsed within 48 hours. Michael had been driving her from the airport when her phone rang with the news. He'd listened to her rage at her legal team, her CTO, the universe itself. And when silence finally came, he'd spoken quietly. "Ms. Brennan, I think there might have been a translation. I didn't hire you to think." Her voice could have frozen nitrogen. "I hired you to drive. So drive." He'd driven. $32 million evaporated into the Pacific. Berlin 1 year ago. German delegation walked out because Victoria's legal team used phrasing that in German corporate law implied Apex would claim full IP ownership. Michael had read the contract while waiting in the parking garage, killing time. He'd seen the problem immediately. "Ms. Brennan, I think Clause 9 might be interpreted." "Michael." She hadn't looked up from her phone. "No one pays you for opinions about contracts. Eyes on the road." The German company signed with a competitor. 40 million gone. 12 times in 3 years. 12 times Michael had seen disasters approaching and tried to warn her. 12 times she'd reminded him that his job description didn't include thinking, so he'd stopped trying. He'd learned to drive in silence and cash his paychecks and lie to his daughter about research grants that didn't exist. The Starbucks line stretched out the door. Michael found a loading zone hazards on and waited while Victoria disappeared inside. Through the window, he watched her push to the front phone still pressed to her ear. Nobody challenged her. That was Victoria's superpower, absolute certainty that the world would accommodate her because she demanded it. Except the world wasn't accommodating anymore. Michael had heard enough phone calls over 6 months to piece together the picture. Apex Technologies was bleeding cash, their flagship product undercut by competitors. 2 major clients jumped ship, the board getting nervous. This merger with Takahashi Corporation and Sing Tech was supposed to save everything. But you couldn't negotiate a $950 million international merger without someone who understood cultural bridges. And all the professional interpreters were booked with a San Francisco tech conference. Victoria emerged carrying a Venti something or other phone still attached to her ear. She yanked the back door hard enough that Michael felt the car rock. "Rebecca, listen, very carefully." Victoria's voice had gone quiet, which was worse than shouting. "Call every contact we have, universities, the UN, language line if necessary. Find me someone who speaks Japanese and Hindi and can handle business negotiations." Michael's fingers drummed the steering wheel once, twice, then he forced them still. "I don't care what it costs." Victoria's coffee sloshed as the car merged into traffic. 20,000 for 2 days. Fine. 30, whatever. Just find someone before 7 tonight. 7 o'clock. That's when Takahashi Corporation's advance team arrived at the St. Regis for preliminary discussions. Casual drinks, cultural pleasantries, the kind of meeting that seemed inconsequential but could destroy everything if you didn't understand unspoken rules. Michael had mediated those meetings for 24 years. He knew Takahashi Hiroshi had founded his company in 1952, which meant he valued legacy over quarterly profits. He knew Japanese business culture treated gifts as language too cheap, suggested disrespect too expensive, suggested bribery. He knew seating arrangements mattered, that silence communicated more than speech, that a bow could mean anything from casual courtesy to profound apology, depending on angle and duration. He knew all this, and Victoria didn't know he knew any of it because she'd never asked. His phone buzzed. Sarah again. Seriously. Dad, don't stress. I can defer. It's not the end of the world. Except it was. Sarah had wanted to be a pediatric oncologist since age 9, since watching her grandmother, Michael's mother, start chemotherapy for breast cancer. Grace had survived that round. The cancer returned last year meaner in her lungs. Stage 4, 12 to 18 months with treatment. Treatment cost $6,000 monthly after Medicare. Sarah's tuition was $34,000 per semester. Michael's driver's salary was $48,000 annually. He'd been living off his State Department severance package. That fund was down to $58,000. At current burn rate, it would be gone by Christmas. Then what? The Mercedes glided to a stop at another red light. Michael's eyes found Victoria in the rear view. She'd abandoned phone calls, now texting furiously, thumbs blurring across the screen. Her coffee sat forgotten, cooling into expensive beige sludge. He'd worked for her 3 years. In that time, he'd learned things about Victoria Brennan that never made Forbes. He'd learned she called her daughter Emma exactly twice monthly, always Sundays, and the calls always ended with Emma saying something that made Victoria's face go tight. He'd learned Victoria's ex-husband sent monthly emails she deleted unread. He'd learned she worked 16-hour days not from love of work, but because the alternative was going home to an empty penthouse that cost more monthly than most people earned yearly. He'd learned Victoria Brennan was brilliant and ruthless and terrified. The terror was new. It had crept into her voice over 6 months as the company deteriorated. Michael recognized it because he'd felt it 3 years ago, standing in his supervisor's office at State, listening to words like restructuring and difficult decisions, and knowing his entire professional identity was about to be erased. Victoria's phone rang. She answered before the first ring finished. "Richard, please tell me you found someone." The pause stretched long enough for Michael to hear his own heartbeat. "I see." Victoria's voice went flat. "And the backup agencies, none of them, not even triple rates." Another pause. Victoria's free hand formed a fist knuckles white. "Fine. Thank you for trying." She ended the call and immediately dialed another number. "Mom, I know we just talked, but I need—" Her voice cracked. "I'm losing everything and I don't know how to fix it." Michael kept his eyes forward. This felt too private, too raw. He shouldn't be hearing this. But the partition was down and sound traveled, and there was nowhere else for either of them to go. Eleanor Brennan's voice filtered through the speaker, warm and steady. "Honey, what's actually happening? Not the business. You. I don't have time for therapy." Victoria's laugh could have drawn blood. "I have 3 hours to find a miracle or watch $950 million walk away. And if that happens, the board votes me out. Everything I built. Vicky." Eleanor's voice cut through the spiral. "When did you start measuring your worth by stock price? When I was 15 and Dad died and you worked yourself into exhaustion paying Columbia tuition." Victoria's voice went quieter, almost gentle. "I swore I'd never be poor again. Never powerless. And now you're learning power and control are different things." Eleanor sighed. "Baby, I love you, but pride has always been your weakness. I have to go." Victoria ended the call before her mother could respond. The Mercedes rolled through the financial district past glass towers reflecting gray sky back at itself. Michael had worked in buildings like these once. Different city, different context, but the same architecture of ambition. His phone buzzed. Not Sarah. His mother's care facility. He let it go to voicemail, already knowing what they wanted. Money. Always money. The kind he didn't have. "Pull over." Victoria's voice was rough. "I need air." Michael found a spot near Battery Park, sliding into a loading zone. Victoria climbed out without waiting for him to open her door, walking to the railing overlooking the harbor. Wind off the water whipped her hair into a golden storm. Michael stayed in the driver's seat. This wasn't an invitation. This was a woman trying to hold herself together, and the last thing she needed was an audience. But he could see her reflection in the side mirror. See her shoulders shake. See her wipe at her eyes with the back of her hand smearing mascara into war paint. His phone buzzed. Voicemail notification. Michael pressed play. "Mr. Carson, this is Judith from Riverside Care, calling about your mother's account. We've been patient, but we're 45 days past due on September, and October is due next week. If we don't receive payment by Friday, we'll need to discuss alternative arrangements for Mrs. Carson's care." Alternative arrangements. Code for discharging his dying mother to somewhere cheaper, somewhere without specialized oncology support, somewhere she'd spend her final months in a facility that smelled like industrial cleaner and defeat. Michael deleted the voicemail. His reflection in the mirror looked back, gray-haired, weathered, wearing a suit that cost more than he made bi-weekly. The irony wasn't lost. Victoria turned from the railing, walking back to the car. Her face was composed now, the CEO mask restored. Only her eyes betrayed her red-rimmed and exhausted. She settled into the back seat without speaking. The partition stayed down. They drove in silence for 10 minutes. Midtown traffic was murder gridlock of taxis, delivery trucks, tourists jaywalking like they'd never heard of mortality. Michael navigated it all with the patience of someone who'd learned rushing never got you there faster. "Tell me something, Michael." Victoria's voice startled him. She almost never used his first name. "How long have you worked for me?" 3 years, Ms. Brennan." 3 years. She tasted the words, finding them strange. "In 3 years, have you ever seen me fail at anything?" The answer required diplomatic precision. "I've seen you face challenges." "That's not what I asked." Michael chose words carefully. "I've seen you build a company from nothing. I've seen you close deals other CEOs called impossible. I've seen you refuse to quit when anyone else would have walked away." "But..." Victoria's reflection watched him. "But I've also seen you try to do everything yourself." The words escaped before Michael could stop them. 3 years of silence breaking. "Because asking for help would mean admitting you don't have all the answers." The air went very still. "You're the driver," Victoria said slowly. "Not my therapist." "Yes, ma'am. My apologies." Another red light. They stopped. Rain hammered the roof. Somewhere distant, a siren wailed. Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. "It's Takahashi's office," she answered, voice suddenly bright and professional. "Mr. Takahashi, what a pleasure. I was just..." She stopped, listened, color drained further. "I see. Yes, I understand. May I ask?" Another pause. "Of course, cultural sensitivity. Absolutely." She lowered the phone but didn't end the call, just held it against her chest like a talisman that had failed. "He's not coming." Her voice was barely audible. "Takahashi Hiroshi himself. He's on the advance team. He never travels for preliminary meetings." "That's unusual," Michael said carefully. "It means he's worried we're not serious." Victoria's fingers went white around the phone. "It means one wrong move tonight and he pulls out entirely." "Ms. Brennan, if I may." "You may not." She raised the phone. "Mr. Takahashi. Still here?" "Yes, 7 o'clock at the St. Regis. We'll be ready. Thank you." She ended the call and immediately dialed another. "Rebecca." Takahashi Hiroshi is personally attending tonight. I need you to... She listened, and whatever Rebecca said made her close her eyes. All of them. Every single contact. Michael watched her reflection crumble. Keep trying. Victoria's voice had gone hollow. There has to be someone. She ended the call, sat in silence. Rain drummed against windows. Michael? She spoke without looking up. What languages do you speak? The question landed like a grenade in the quiet car. Michael's heart rate kicked up 20 beats per minute. His palms went damp against leather. This was the moment. 3 years of waiting, and this was the moment. He could say just English and let it pass. Let her fail. Let the company collapse. Let himself stay safe in shadows invisible and untouchable and slowly suffocating. Or he could speak. Ms. Brennan, he said quietly. What languages do you need? The silence that followed felt like standing at a cliff's edge, waiting to see if the ground beneath was solid or illusion. Victoria's eyes met his in the mirror. What did you just say? For the merger. Michael's voice stayed steady despite the earthquake in his chest. Which languages do you need? That's not... She stopped herself. Recalibrated. Japanese, Mandarin, probably Hindi for Sing Tech. Korean would help for Samsung subsidiary clauses. Michael took a breath. Let it out slowly. Committed. I'm fluent in Japanese, Mandarin, Korean, and Hindi, he said. Also Arabic and Spanish. I can read French and German. Victoria stared through the mirror. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You speak 6 languages. Yes, ma'am. Fluently. Yes. And you never mentioned this because you never asked Michael thought. Because in 3 years you've never once inquired about my background, my education, my capabilities beyond navigating traffic. But he didn't say that. Instead, would you like me to prove it? Before Victoria could answer, her phone rang. The name on screen, Takahashi Hiroshi, Tokyo Direct. She looked at the phone, looked at Michael, looked back at the phone. Her hand trembled as she passed it forward through the partition gap. Don't make me regret this, she whispered. Michael took the phone, raised it to his ear, and when he spoke, his voice transformed into something it hadn't been for 3 years. Confident, warm, fluent in a language he'd learned from his mother before learning to read. Moshi Moshi Takahashi-san. Kochira wa Michael Carson to Moshimasu. Hontou ni oden wa arigatou gozaimasu. The line went quiet for 3 heartbeats. Then Takahashi Hiroshi's voice came through cautious but intrigued, speaking rapid Japanese that would be incomprehensible to anyone without years of cultural immersion. Michael listened, nodded, though Takahashi couldn't see, responded with precise formality that acknowledged both Takahashi's seniority and potential partnership between equals. In the mirror, Victoria's face cycled through expressions: shock, disbelief, hope, and something resembling fury at her own blindness. The conversation lasted 12 minutes. Michael switched between Japanese and Mandarin when another voice joined Jiang Wei from the Chinese manufacturing division. Technical terms flowed like water: intellectual property, market penetration, vertical integration. The vocabulary of international business in 3 languages delivered with the ease of someone who'd spent 2 decades keeping the world from imploding. Finally, Michael bowed his head, slightly. Respect Takahashi couldn't see, but would understand in tone, and concluded with perfect ritual courtesy. He handed the phone back. They're looking forward to meeting you this evening, he said calmly. The cultural misunderstanding has been addressed. Victoria took the phone like it might explode. What cultural misunderstanding? Your legal team's preliminary contract used language implying Apex would maintain unilateral final decision authority. in Japanese business culture that suggests you view them as subordinates rather than partners. Michael shifted into drive, merging into traffic with the same smooth precision he'd used for 3 years. I explained the phrasing was a translation oversight, that Apex deeply respects Takahashi Corporation's 70-year legacy and that you've personally studied Japanese corporate customs to demonstrate commitment. But I haven't. You have now. Michael kept his eyes forward. Mr. Takahashi was particularly moved that you took time to learn about his father's work rebuilding Tokyo after the war. He said few Western executives show that cultural respect. Victoria was silent for a long moment. Then, "Who are you?" "I'm your driver." "Ms. Brennan." "Like hell you are." The Mercedes turned onto the street leading to Apex headquarters. The 40-story glass tower rose against gray sky like a monument to ambition that hadn't quite learned humility. "Underground parking," Victoria said. "Then you're going to tell me everything." Michael nodded. The car descended into the building's concrete belly, fluorescent lights flickering past like a countdown to something irreversible. He found Victoria's reserved spot, killed the engine. The sudden silence felt enormous. Victoria didn't move to exit. Neither did Michael. "I need to know everything," she said finally, "starting with why a man who speaks 6 languages and negotiates with Japanese CEOs has been driving my car for 3 years. Michael turned to face her directly for the first time. Through the partition gap, their eyes met without the mirror's filter. PhD in International Relations, Georgetown University, 1995, he began. Master's in Applied Linguistics, Harvard, 1992. Senior Diplomatic Interpreter, United States Department of State, 1997 to 2021. 24 years. Victoria's face went very still. Specialized in multilateral negotiations. G7 Summits 2015, 2018, 2019. Lead Interpreter for U.S.-China Trade Negotiations, 2017 to 2020. Mediator for Okinawa Base Accord, 2020. Michael pulled out his phone, showed her the presidential commendation. Budget cuts eliminated my position in 2021. I was 51. You sent applications. Not a question. 340. Got 2 interviews. Both said I was overqualified for entry level and too expensive for senior roles. He put the phone away. My mother was diagnosed stage 4 lung cancer that month. My daughter's medical school tuition was due. I needed work immediately. Your company posted a driver position. I applied. For 3 years. For 3 years I've driven and kept quiet. Michael's voice was level factual. Because I had no other options. Victoria stepped out into harsh garage light. Michael followed, standing beside the Mercedes in his black suit and chauffeur's cap. She looked at him like seeing a ghost. Seoul, 6 months ago. You tried to warn me. Yes. I told you to stay in your lane. Yes. Berlin, the German contract. You knew about Clause 9. I read the contract waiting for your meeting. The problem was obvious to anyone familiar with German corporate law. Michael met her eyes. I tried to tell you. You said you didn't pay me for opinions. How many times? 12. Over 3 years. I tried to warn you 12 times about problems I could have fixed. He didn't look away. After the 12th, I stopped trying. The parking garage was silent except for distant ventilation hum and the tick of cooling engine. Why didn't you quit? Find something else. Ms. Brennan, I sent 340 applications in 2021. Know how many I've sent since 0? Because I learned the market doesn't want 50-year-old former diplomats. It wants 25-year-old disruptors who'll work for half my old salary. He took off his cap, held it in both hands. I have a daughter, 3 months from finishing her 3rd year at Johns Hopkins. She wants to be a pediatric oncologist because she watched her grandmother fight cancer. Her tuition is $34,000 per semester. My mother's cancer treatment costs $6,000 monthly after Medicare. My salary here is $48,000 annually. Victoria did the math. Her face went pale. I've been living off State Department severance. That money runs out at Christmas. Michael's voice was quiet. So, No, I didn't quit. Quitting meant my daughter drops out and my mother dies without treatment that might give her 6 more months. I stayed because I had no choice. Michael, but I need you to understand something. He looked at her directly, and for the first time in 3 years, let her see the man he'd been before desperation made him small. I didn't just drive for 3 years. I studied your company, learned your industry, read every contract that passed through your hands, listened to every conference call that bled through the partition. I prepared. For what? For the moment when you'd finally ask the right question. He smiled, tired but genuine. For the moment when you'd need exactly what I know how to do. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, eyes widening. Rebecca says Takahashi's advance team just arrived at the St. Regis early, asking about cultural protocols. Nobody knows what to tell them. Michael put his cap back on. In Japanese business, culture gifts should acknowledge their company's founding year 1952 for Takahashi. Not expensive, which implies buying influence, but thoughtful, showing respect for legacy. White peonies are traditional for business partnerships. They symbolize honor and prosperity without romantic implications. He started toward the building entrance. Seating by company age, not revenue. Takahashi right side because they're older. Singh left apex middle as host. Business cards exchanged with both hands read carefully before being placed on the table, never pocketed. And don't be late. 15 minutes early is on time in Japanese culture. Victoria hurried to catch up, heels clicking on concrete. How do you know all this? Because my mother is Japanese. She taught me the language before English. And because for 24 years I stood in rooms where my understanding of cultural nuance was the only thing preventing international incidents. He pushed the elevator button. This is what I do, Ms. Brennan, or what I did before I became invisible. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. Victoria pressed the executive floor button. You're not invisible anymore, she said quietly. The elevator rose through the building's glass and steel heart. Michael watched floor numbers climb and thought about Sarah, about his mother, about 3 years of silence finally breaking open. Ms. Brennan, he said as the elevator slowed. We have 2 hours, 43 minutes before Takahashi and his team arrive. I need to change. You need to repair your makeup, and we both need to prepare for the most important meeting of your life. The doors opened. Rebecca Walsh stood waiting, face pale with stress. Victoria, thank God. Takahashi's team is at the hotel. They want to meet in 90 minutes instead of 3 hours. Mr. Takahashi doesn't want to waste time. Rebecca's words tumbled over each other. And I still haven't found an interpreter. We have an interpreter. Victoria stepped out, voice regaining command. Rebecca, this is Michael Carson. He'll handle all translation and cultural protocols. Rebecca's eyes went to Michael's uniform, then back to Victoria. I'm sorry, what? Michael holds a PhD from Georgetown and master's from Harvard. He was senior diplomatic interpreter at State for 24 years. He speaks 6 languages fluently. Victoria's voice was crisp. Any other questions? Rebecca's mouth worked silently. Then, should he change before the meeting? We have 87 minutes. Victoria looked at Michael. Can you be ready? I've been ready for 3 years, Ms. Brennan. He pulled out his phone, already scrolling contacts. But I need you to trust me completely. No second guessing. No interruptions. When we're in that room with Takahashi, you follow my lead on all cultural matters. Victoria held his gaze. 70 people lose jobs if this fails, including you. Then let's make sure it doesn't. The office erupted into controlled chaos. Rebecca pulled Michael toward executive wardrobe. Apex kept emergency suits for visiting executives. Victoria disappeared into her office to repair damage. Michael found himself in a dressing room with designer suits. He chose navy Tom Ford conservative but well cut with a silver tie suggesting competence without trying too hard. The transformation took 8 minutes. When he emerged, Rebecca waited with a tablet. Everything we have on Takahashi Corporation. Financial reports, org charts, press releases. Michael took it, scanning rapidly. His mind sorted information the way it had for 2 decades, filtering essential from noise-building mental maps of who these people were and what they valued. Takahashi Hiroshi, 65, CEO and patriarch. Founded the company at 22 with money borrowed from his father-in-law. Built it from 3 people to 8,000 employees. Conservative, traditional, valued loyalty and long-term thinking over quarterly profits. His son Takahashi Kenji, 38, Executive VP, Harvard MBA. 3 years at McKinsey before joining family business. Reputation as hard negotiator, pushing his father toward aggressive expansion. And there, in a business journal footnote, a detail that made Michael smile. Takahashi Hiroshi's father had worked alongside American engineers during Tokyo Reconstruction in the early 1950s. He'd specifically credited an engineer named Robert Sterling for teaching him that collaboration between former enemies could build something stronger than either could alone. Michael's father, Robert Sterling, civil engineer, Tokyo Reconstruction, 1947 to 1954. The pieces fell into place like a puzzle completing itself. Victoria emerged from her office, transformed back into the polished executive who'd graced magazine covers. Hair perfect, makeup concealing earlier tears, charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Michael made monthly. "You clean up well," she said, looking him over. "So do you." 90-second briefing while Rebecca calls a car. Victoria's eyes were sharp again, focused. "What do I absolutely need to know?" Michael set down the tablet. "Takahashi Hiroshi's father worked with my father on Tokyo Reconstruction after the war. That gives us connection, foundation of trust between families. But only if we handle it correctly. We don't lead with it. We let it emerge naturally." "What else?" "He brought his son to this preliminary meeting. That's unusual and significant. Either Kenji pushed to attend because he's concerned, or Hiroshi brought him to demonstrate family unity. Either way, we address both as equals while respecting hierarchy. Anything I should avoid?" "Don't be too effusive. Japanese culture values restraint. Don't fill silences. Silence is comfortable for them. And most importantly, don't thank them excessively. One sincere expression of gratitude is worth more than 10 casual ones." The elevator arrived. They rode down in silence. A black town car waited at street level. Rebecca had pulled strings. As they slid into the back seat, Victoria turned to Michael. "I need to say something before we do this. Ms. Brennan, 3 years." Her voice was quiet. 3 years I had you right there and I never saw you. Not because you were invisible, but because I was too arrogant to look." Michael said nothing. "My mother told me strength isn't about who you look down on, but who you still see when they're beneath you." Victoria looked out at Manhattan sliding past. "I failed that test. Badly. We can talk after—" "No, I need to say it now." She faced him. "I'm sorry, Michael, for 3 years of waste. For every time I shut you down. For treating you like furniture instead of a human being." The apology hung in the air, fragile and real. "Apologies later," Michael said gently. "Right now we have a company to save." The town car pulled up to the St. Regis. Through windows, Michael could see the lobby glittering with old-world elegance, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, the kind of luxury that whispered instead of shouted. Somewhere in that hotel, Takahashi Hiroshi was waiting. Along with him, the future of 70 jobs, the future of Sarah's medical degree, the future of his mother's treatment, the future Michael had spent 3 years preparing for without knowing when it would arrive. "Ready?" Victoria asked. Michael straightened his tie, centered himself. Let's build a bridge. They stepped out into Manhattan, evening rain still falling soft as promises, and walked through gold-framed doors into the next chapter of both their lives. Friday morning, 6:47 a.m. Michael woke to his phone buzzing on the nightstand of his small Queens apartment. A text from Victoria sent 3 minutes ago: Singh's team lands at 8 a.m. Breakfast meeting at Apex 8:30. Be ready. He'd slept 4 hours. His body ached from adrenaline crash. Yesterday's negotiation with Takahashi had wrung him dry, but his mind was already running scenarios for today's challenge. Priya Singh, CEO of Singh Tech Group, British-educated, sharp as surgical steel, with exactly zero patience for inefficiency or sentiment. The complete opposite of Takahashi's respectful formality. Michael showered, dressed in the same Tom Ford suit from yesterday, and caught the 7:15 subway into Manhattan. The car was packed with morning commuters, all staring at phones or middle distance. He stood holding a poll, reviewing everything he knew about Singh Tech. Founded 1987 in Mumbai by Rajesh Singh, Priya's father, with a philosophy that technology should empower the underserved, not just the privileged. Priya had studied at London Business School, spent 3 years at Goldman Sachs, then returned to transform her father's modest operation into a billion-dollar enterprise. She ran it like a tech startup, despite it being family business. She valued directness, competence, results. And according to Victoria's intelligence, she'd received competing offers from Vertex Technologies yesterday. Better terms, lower risk, no exposure to Apex's financial instability. Michael's phone buzzed. Rebecca Singh's plane landed early. She's already in a car. ETA 8:15. He texted back. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Have coffee ready. Good coffee, not office swill. She spent 3 years in London, she'll notice. The subway pulled into his stop. Michael climbed stairs into Manhattan morning, the city already alive with the energy of 8 million people trying to make their futures happen simultaneously. Apex Technologies' headquarters looked different in daylight. Or maybe Michael was different, walking through the lobby not as invisible help, but as someone security guards actually acknowledged. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt faster. Victoria was waiting in her office, surrounded by documents and cold coffee. She'd been here all night from the look of things. Fresh suit, but eyes carrying exhaustion Michael felt in his bones. Tell me about Singh, she said without preamble. Michael pulled up files on his phone. Priya Singh values 3 things: competence, directness, and results. Everything that worked with Takahashi, cultural deference, building trust through shared values, will backfire with her. She needs to see that Apex is worth her time, and this merger serves her vision, not just our desperation. So what's our approach? Show strength, not vulnerability. Demonstrate that our technology platform can do things her company can't do alone. Make it about opportunity, not rescue. Michael checked his watch. She'll be here in 10 minutes. Where's David Park? Conference room with Andrea Walsh. They're prepping technical demonstrations. Good, I need 30 seconds with them before Singh arrives. Michael found David and Andrea in conference room 2, surrounded by monitors displaying AI architecture. Andrea, one of their lead engineers, looked terrified to be pulled into executive dramatics. Show me what makes your platform different, Michael said. Pretend I'm a skeptical foreign investor who needs to understand in 5 minutes why this matters. For the next 8 minutes, Andrea walked him through the technology with the joy of someone finally encountering curiosity instead of blank stares. The novel approach to machine learning that processed visual data faster than competing algorithms. Edge computing capabilities that worked in low-bandwidth environments. Modular design customizable for different markets. Michael asked questions in 3 languages: English for core concepts, Japanese for phrases that would resonate with Takahashi's manufacturing expertise, Hindi for applications that might interest Singh's developing market focus. By the time Rebecca appeared in the doorway, She's in the elevator. Michael had assembled a mental map of how to position Apex's technology as the solution to problems Sing Tech hadn't solved yet. Conference room A, Michael said, already moving. Set it up like a working meeting, not a sales pitch. Laptops, open data visible like we were in the middle of important work when she arrived. The executive team assembled with controlled urgency. Marcus Hayes, the CFO, compiled financial projections. Lisa Mendez from marketing pulled market research on Sing Tech's gaps. David set up displays showing Apex's platform in action. At 8:17, the elevator chimed. Priya Singh stepped out with presence that didn't need announcement. Maybe 5'4" in heels, but she moved like someone who'd learned to command space through personality, rather than physical stature. Savile Row suit, minimal but expensive jewelry, handshake firm enough to make a point. Ms. Brennan, thank you for meeting on short notice. Her accent was British boarding school layered over Mumbai roots. I have exactly 90 minutes before my next call. Shall we make them count? No pleasantries. No small talk. Michael liked her immediately. They settled in the conference room. Singh's COO, Rajesh Mehta, was silver-haired 50s, setting up a laptop without being asked. Her lawyer, Sarah Chen, younger, but carrying herself with quiet confidence of someone who'd negotiated deals that made or broke companies. Singh got straight to it. I've reviewed your Q3 financials. Cash flow is concerning. Revenue down, 18% year over year, 2 major client losses. Flagship product being undercut by competitors offering similar functionality at half cost. Why should Sing Tech tie our future to yours when you're clearly struggling? The same attack Kenji had launched yesterday but delivered with surgical precision. Victoria started to respond, but Michael caught her eye and gave a barely perceptible headshake. Priya ji, he said in Hindi, Vikas aur labh dono samay mangte hain lekin neev mazboot honi chahiye. Singh's eyebrows rose. She responded in Hindi, rapid-fire testing his fluency. Michael matched her pace, explaining that growth and profit both required time but demanded strong foundations. She switched to English, slight smile playing at her lips. You speak Hindi? 6 languages, actually. And I've studied Sing Tech's expansion strategy over the past 5 years. Impressive work in Southeast Asia, but you've hit a ceiling in market penetration because your current platform can't handle edge computing requirements for rural India. Singh's expression sharpened. Go on. Your technology is built for high-bandwidth environments, cities, but 70% of India's population lives where connectivity is inconsistent at best. Apex's modular AI platform can run local processing on devices with minimal server requirements. Michael gestured to Andrea, who pulled up a demonstration. We can bring your applications to markets you can't currently reach. Interesting technical capability. Singh leaned forward. But technology alone doesn't make a partnership. I need to know your company won't implode the moment I tie my reputation to it. Victoria stepped in. You're right that we've faced challenges. I won't pretend otherwise. But those challenges forced us to rebuild our entire product architecture. The result is technology that's more flexible, more powerful, more adaptable than anything we had before. User growth is up 340% in 1 quarter. User growth isn't revenue, Singh countered. Not yet, Victoria agreed. But it will be. And when it converts, having your distribution network and Takahashi's manufacturing capabilities means we can scale faster than any competitor can match. Singh studied Victoria for a long moment, then she shifted her gaze to Michael. Rebecca mentioned you on the phone this morning. She said you were the driver. I was. Michael kept his voice even. Now I'm the person making sure this merger succeeds. Interesting career transition. Singh's tone was dry. What changed? Ms. Brennan asked the right question at the right time. He met Singh's eyes directly. She asked what I could do instead of what my job title said I should do. That's the same flexibility that made her company worth your time in the first place. Singh absorbed this, then turned to her team. Rapid exchange in Hindi followed Singh questioning Rajesh about technical specifications, Sarah about legal structures, both responding with efficiency of people who'd worked together long enough to develop shorthand. Finally, Singh looked back at Victoria. I want to see your development team, right now. No preparation. It was a test. Michael recognized the strategy surprise inspections revealed truth that curated presentations concealed. Rebecca, take Ms. Singh to the R&D floor, Victoria said without hesitation. No warning to the team. Singh's eyes narrowed slightly. Approval, maybe, or absence of expected resistance. They took the elevator down to the 10th floor where 40 engineers worked in organized chaos. Whiteboards covered in code monitors displaying complex architectures, the kind of creative disorder that drove innovation. Singh walked through, slowly stopping at random desks to ask questions. One junior developer froze when Singh asked what he was working on, his explanation stumbling over nervous energy. The code he demonstrated had bugs visible even to Michael's non-expert eye. Your team seems undermanaged, Singh observed to Victoria. They're brilliant but resource-constrained. We've been understaffed 18 months. Victoria's honesty was risky, but Michael had coached her on this. Singh would respect transparency more than polished lies. That's part of why this merger matters. We need your operational expertise as much as you need our technology. Singh appreciated that. Michael saw it in the way her posture relaxed by degrees. Then an alert flashed across the developer's screen. Red text. Urgent. Security breach attempt detected. The engineer's face went white. Someone's trying to access our cloud servers. Senior engineer Tom Martinez sprinted over, fingers flying across keyboard. Singapore IP address. They got through first firewall layer. Targeting the image recognition algorithm. Singh's expression went ice cold. Singapore. That's where Vertex Technologies operates. Vertex, Apex's primary competitor, also courting Singh Tech. Michael's mind made connections instantly. Lock it down, Victoria commanded. Now. Already on it. Tom's voice was tight with focus. But they breached first layer. Another minute and they could have stolen core IP. Singh turned to Victoria, face unreadable. Michael pulled out his phone. Ms. Singh, may I make a call? To whom? Your Mumbai office. Your chief security officer. He met her gaze steadily. Because if Vertex breached us, they likely attempted your systems simultaneously. The algorithms are linked in the proposed merger architecture. Understanding flickered across Singh's face. She nodded to Rajesh, who immediately dialed Mumbai. 5 minutes of rapid coordination confirmed Michael's suspicion. Vertex had launched coordinated attacks on both companies' systems, attempting to steal intellectual property before the merger could be finalized. Michael called a contact at FBI Cyber Division, a colleague from his State Department days who'd transitioned to domestic security. Explained the situation in clipped professional terms. Got confirmation they'd track the Singapore operation. Throughout it all, he coordinated responses in 3 languages. Hindi to Singh's Mumbai team, English to Apex's engineers, technical terminology that bridged both worlds. When the breach was contained and immediate crisis passed, Singh looked at Michael with new calculation. Your former driver just coordinated a cross-continental cybersecurity response in 3 languages and prevented catastrophic intellectual property theft. She turned to Victoria. Who is he? Someone I didn't see for 3 years, Victoria said quietly. Someone I won't overlook again. Singh's expression suggested respect grudgingly given. Mr. Carson, you have my attention. And my appreciation. I made phone calls. Your team and Apex's team did the actual work. Humility and competence. Singh's smile was slight but genuine. Rare combination. She turned to Victoria, and Michael could see the decision forming behind her eyes. Ms. Brennan, I came here 90% certain I would walk away from this deal. Vertex offered me better terms yesterday. Victoria's face went carefully neutral, but Michael saw her hands tighten on the table edge. But Vertex doesn't have integrity, Singh continued. And they don't have him. She gestured at Michael. I'm in. Let's finalize this merger. Victoria's exhale was barely audible, but Michael heard it. Relief and reprieve and knowledge that they'd cleared one hurdle only to face another. We still need Takahashi's final approval, Michael said. Main negotiation is tomorrow at 2. This is only half the battle. Singh nodded. Then let's make sure you win the other half. Rajesh, clear my schedule for tomorrow. I want to be there when Takahashi makes his decision. They spent the next hour hammering out preliminary terms, ownership percentages, board representation, operational structures. Singh's lawyer Sarah was ruthlessly efficient, identifying potential conflicts before they could fester. By 10 o'clock, they had the skeleton of an agreement. Not final, not binding, but enough to move forward with confidence. Singh stood extending her hand to Victoria. I look forward to tomorrow's negotiation. Don't disappoint me. We won't. After Singh's departure, the executive team reconvened in Victoria's office. The energy had shifted, still stressed but energized rather than desperate. We actually might pull this off, Marcus said, sounding surprised. We're not there yet. Michael loosened his tie, feeling exhaustion settle into his bones. Kenji Takahashi is still shopping the deal to Mitsui. We need to give his father a reason to choose us that goes beyond business terms. What reason? Lisa asked. Legacy. Continuity. The idea that this merger continues something his father started 70 years ago. Michael pulled up the photo on his phone again. His father and Takahashi Ichiro shaking hands in front of the Sumida Bridge. This is our advantage. We're not just offering a business deal, we're offering completion of unfinished work. David spoke up, tentative. Michael, I need to apologize. Yesterday morning I questioned your credentials. I was wrong. You were protecting the company. That's your job. Michael's voice held no resentment. But now you know I've been protecting it too, just from a position you didn't recognize as valuable. The words hung in the air with weight they'd lacked that morning. Victoria broke the silence. It's 10:30. Everyone go home. Get rest. Tomorrow's negotiation starts at 2, but I want everyone here by noon for final preparation. The team filed out. Michael started to follow, but Victoria called him back. Wait. He turned. She was standing by the window looking out at Manhattan's glittering sprawl. When I called Emma yesterday, she asked if I was happy. Victoria's reflection in glass looked tired. I couldn't answer. Couldn't remember the last time I'd thought about happiness instead of quarterly projections. What did you tell her? That I was trying to be better. That sometimes you don't realize you're lost until someone shows you a different path. She turned to face him. Thank you. For today. For saving this deal. For giving me a chance to be someone my daughter might actually be proud of. Michael thought about Sarah, about the text he'd sent her explaining that her tuition was covered and she didn't need to defer. About the relief in her response, the love in her words. We save each other, he said. That's what partnerships do. His phone buzzed. A text from the care facility. Your mother is resting comfortably. Dr. Wells said you called about arrangements. Let us know when you're ready to discuss next steps. 2 to 4 months. The timeline felt both infinite and impossibly short. I need to go, Michael said. My mother. Go. Be with your family. Victoria's voice was gentle. Tomorrow we finish what we started. Michael took the subway to Queens to the care facility where his mother lay in a room that smelled of antiseptic and declining hope. Grace Carson was awake when he arrived, propped up in bed with oxygen tubes at her nose and a book in her lap. She'd always been a reader. Even dying, she refused to be bored. Michael. Her smile was tired but genuine. Sarah called. She said you performed a miracle yesterday. Not a miracle, just remembered who I used to be. Who you've always been, Grace corrected. You just stopped letting yourself be seen. He pulled a chair close to her bed, took her hand. The bones felt fragile beneath papery skin. The doctor says 2 to 4 months. I know. Grace's voice was calm. I'm not afraid, sweetheart. I've had a good life, raised a son I'm proud of, watched my granddaughter become someone extraordinary. That's enough. It's not enough for me. That's because you're still living. She squeezed his hand with what strength she had left. Promise me something. Anything. Don't waste whatever time you have left trying to be invisible. The world needs what you can do, not hidden in shadows but out where people can see. Michael's throat tightened. I promise. They sat in silence for a while, her breathing steady with oxygen's assistance, his mind running through everything that had happened in the impossible hours since yesterday morning. Finally, Grace spoke again. Your father would be proud, not just of yesterday, of every day you kept going when it would have been easier to quit. I almost did quit. So many times. But you didn't. That's what matters. She closed her eyes. Now go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you have bridges to finish building. He kissed her forehead and left, walking out into a Queen's night that felt both familiar and foreign. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Thank you isn't enough for what you did today. But thank you anyway. See you tomorrow. Michael typed a response. Tomorrow we finish what our fathers started. He hit send and headed home to his small apartment. Sleep came fitfully. Michael's mind kept cycling through scenarios for tomorrow's negotiation. Kenji would push hard for Mitsui. The younger Takahashi saw numbers and risk profiles, not legacy and partnership. Michael needed to shift the equation so that choosing Apex became about more than quarterly projections. At 2:47 a.m., his phone rang. Unknown number, but the country code was Japan. Michael answered, heart racing. This is Michael Carson. Carson-san. The voice was elderly, refined, speaking English with careful precision. This is Nakamura Takeshi. Takahashi Hiroshi gave me your number. I hope I'm not calling too early. Michael sat up in bed, fully awake now. Nakamura Takeshi, the legendary businessman who'd built his company alongside Takahashi's father in the 1950s. Nakamura-san, it's an honor. My father spoke of you often. As mine spoke of Robert Sterling. Nakamura's voice carried warmth despite formality. Hiroshi called me after your meeting. He told me about the photograph, about your proposal. He said you reminded him of the way his father used to talk about building bridges instead of walls. Michael waited. There was more coming. I'm 82 years old, Carson-san. I've watched Japan rebuild twice, once from war, once from economic collapse. I've seen partnerships between our countries create prosperity, and I've seen arrogance destroy possibility. Nakamura paused. Hiroshi is my oldest friend's son. I want him to make the right choice, not just the profitable one. I understand. Do you? The question carried weight. Because Kenji is pushing him toward Mitsui Corporation. Better terms, they say. Less risk. A purely Japanese solution to a global problem. What do you think he should do? I think he should remember that his father's greatest strength was knowing when to trust foreigners who earned that trust through respect and competence. The old man's voice softened. I'm flying to New York this morning. I'll be at your meeting this afternoon. Not to speak, I'm too old to insert myself uninvited, but to observe. To see if you're truly Robert Sterling's son or just someone who knows how to use his father's memory. The line went dead before Michael could respond. He stared at his phone, recalculating everything. Nakamura's presence would put enormous pressure on Takahashi. The old man's opinion carried moral authority that transcended business logic. If Nakamura approved of the merger, Kenji's objections would lose force. If he disapproved, the deal was dead. Michael texted Victoria. Nakamura Takeshi is attending the meeting. Don't react visibly when he arrives. This changes everything. Her response came immediately despite the hour. Who is he, living legend? Takahashi's father's business partner. If he blesses this merger, we win. If not, Mitsui gets the deal. Then we'd better be perfect. Michael tried to sleep, but couldn't. At 5 a.m., he gave up, showered, and caught the early subway into Manhattan. By 7 a.m., he was at Apex headquarters reviewing files on Nakamura Takeshi. News articles, business profiles, the kind of research he'd done in his sleep during State Department days. Nakamura and Takahashi Ichiro had founded their companies within months of each other in 1952. Shared resources, shared risks built modern Japan's industrial base together. When Ichiro died in 1998, Nakamura delivered the eulogy, said their friendship proved peace was stronger than war if people chose to build instead of destroy. Victoria arrived at 8 a.m. with coffee and determination. Tell me about Nakamura. Michael showed her the research. He's principled, not sentimental. Nakamura retired 15 years ago, but he still commands enormous respect in Japanese business circles. If he attends this meeting, it's because Takahashi asked for guidance. And if he offers an opinion, Takahashi will listen even if it contradicts what Kenji wants. How do we win him over? We don't try, we just be honest about what we're offering and why it matters. Michael met her eyes. Nakamura will see through any performance. The only way to earn his respect is to deserve it. At 11 a.m., the board assembled for final briefing. Gerald Whitmore, the board chairman, sat at the head of the table with the warmth of a contract lawyer reading terms of surrender. Victoria, Mr. Carson. Whitmore's voice was measured. The board received updates on yesterday's progress with Sing Tech. We're cautiously optimistic, but we need to understand the status with Takahashi before we fully endorse this direction. Takahashi Hiroshi and his son arrive at 1:30, Victoria said. Priya Singh arrives at 1:45. Main negotiation at 2. We're as ready as we can be. Patricia Morrison, the venture capitalist, leaned forward. What's our confidence level that Takahashi chooses us over Mitsui? Michael spoke before Victoria could. 70%. Kenji is pushing for Mitsui because the numbers look better on paper, but Hiroshi values legacy and relationship over short-term profit. If we can show him this merger continues what his father started, he'll choose us. And if we're wrong, Morrison pressed, then Apex files bankruptcy in 90 days and this entire board gets replaced. Michael's voice was level. But we're not wrong. I've spent 24 years reading people across cultural divides. Takahashi wants to believe in this partnership. Our job is to give him permission to do what he already wants to do. Whitmore studied him for a long moment. Mr. Carson, the board is trusting you with the future of this company. Don't make us regret it. I won't, sir. The board filed out. Michael checked his watch. 1:17. 43 minutes until Takahashi arrived. Rebecca appeared in the doorway. Takahashi's car just pulled up. They're early. Michael and Victoria exchanged glances. Early meant eager or nervous. Either way, it meant the decision wasn't made yet. Conference room ready? Victoria asked. Everything exactly as Michael specified. White peonies, seating arranged, coffee and tea prepared. They walked to the main conference room together. The round table had been replaced with a larger rectangular one, Apex at one end, space for Takahashi on one side and Singh on the other. Three-way partnership, not two parties negotiating with a third. At 1:29, the elevator chimed. Takahashi Hiroshi entered first, followed by Kenji and Tanaka. Behind them walked an elderly man who moved with careful dignity, leaning on a cane but seeming anything but diminished. Nakamura Takeshi. Michael bowed 30 degrees, the angle appropriate for a revered elder, and held it for 5 full seconds. When he straightened, Nakamura's eyes held a glint of approval. Carson-san, your father taught you well. He taught me that respect isn't given, it's earned through attention to what matters. He would be proud of you today. They took seats. Nakamura positioned himself slightly behind Takahashi, making clear he was observer rather than participant. But his presence filled the room like gravity, invisible but inescapable. Priya Singh arrived at 1:44 with Rajesh and Sarah. She nodded to Takahashi with professional courtesy, then looked at Michael. Ready to finish what we started. Always. Everyone settled. Coffee poured. The ritual of beginning unfolded. Victoria opened. Thank you all for being here. This merger represents more than business. It represents a vision of how 3 companies with complementary strengths can create something none of us could build alone. Kenji leaned forward immediately. Ms. Brennan, let's dispense with vision statements. We're here to discuss terms. Specifically, why Apex deserves equal partnership when your financial position is dramatically weaker than either Takahashi or Singh Tech. Before Victoria could respond, Nakamura spoke quietly in Japanese. Kenji-san, your father and I built our companies when Japan had nothing. We succeeded not because we were strong, but because we found partners who made us stronger. Kenji's face went carefully neutral. You didn't contradict elders in Japanese culture. Takahashi nodded slowly. Nakamura-sensei is correct. Strength isn't just about current assets. It's about potential when combined correctly. Father with respect potential doesn't pay debts. Kenji pulled out a tablet displayed financial charts. Apex has 90 days of operating cash. If this merger takes 6 months to finalize, they'll be insolvent before we sign final documents. Singh's eyes narrowed. This was starker than Victoria had disclosed. That's why we're proposing an accelerated timeline, Victoria said voice level despite the bomb Kenji had detonated. Preliminary agreement signed today, full merger finalized within 60 days. Impossible, Kenji said. Legal due diligence alone takes 90 days minimum. Not if we structure it as strategic partnership with merger completion contingent on benchmarks. Michael pulled up documents, shared them to displays. We create joint venture, immediately share resources and IP under partnership terms, then convert to full merger after benchmarks prove technology integration works as promised. Sarah Chen Singh's lawyer was already scrolling. This is actually quite elegant. Protects all parties while allowing immediate collaboration. It's also risky, Kenji countered. We're betting on unproven technology integration. No more risky than any innovation. Michael switched to Japanese, addressing Takahashi directly. Your father bet on unproven American engineering in 1952. That risk built your company's foundation. Takahashi's eyes met Nakamura's. Something unspoken passed between them. Tell them about the bridge, Nakamura said quietly. Michael pulled up the photograph on the main display, his father and Takahashi Ichiro shaking hands in front of Sumida Bridge framework. 1951. Tokyo Reconstruction. Your father and mine worked together on structural engineering that combined Japanese aesthetics with American industrial capacity. The bridge they built still stands. He let the image speak. They didn't wait for perfect conditions or zero risk. They saw possibility and acted. Kenji stared at the photograph. That's a nice story, Carson-san. But we're not rebuilding bridges. We're merging technology companies in a competitive market that punishes hesitation. We're doing both, Michael said. Building bridges between technologies, between markets, between ways of thinking. And doing it fast because waiting means losing to competitors who don't care about doing it right. The room fell silent. Then Takahashi spoke. Carson-san, you argue persuasively. But can you promise this merger will succeed? No. Michael's honesty cut through. I can't promise success any more than my father could promise the Sumida Bridge wouldn't collapse. But I can promise everyone at this table will give everything to make it work, and the alternative, continuing on separate paths, leads to slow irrelevance for all of us. Nakamura stood slowly. All eyes turned. Takahashi-san, I came because you asked me to witness this. He looked around. I see two futures. In one, you choose safety with Mitsui and preserve what your father built. In the other, you choose risk with these partners and continue what your father started, building bridges that connect different worlds. He turned to Takahashi directly. Your father didn't rebuild Tokyo by playing it safe. He took chances on foreign engineers who earned his trust. Carson-san has earned that trust. The question is whether you have your father's courage to act on it. The weight pressed down like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Takahashi closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked at Victoria. I need honesty. Can your company survive long enough to make this work? If we sign partnership agreements today and begin resource sharing immediately, yes. If we spend 3 months in legal negotiations while burning cash, no. Her voice didn't waver. That's why I'm asking for trust on an accelerated timeline. Takahashi looked at his son. Kenji, what do you think I should do? Kenji's face showed the struggle. Finally, I think Carson-san is right that the status quo leads to irrelevance. I think this partnership carries enormous risk. And I think... He paused. I think grandfather would have taken the risk. Takahashi smiled slightly. Then let's honor his memory properly. He stood extending his hand to Victoria. Ms. Brennan, Takahashi Corporation will move forward with this partnership. I expect you to meet every benchmark you've promised. Victoria shook his hand. You won't regret this. Priya Singh stood as well. Then Singh Tech is officially committed. Let's create something that makes Mitsui regret their caution. The next 2 hours dissolved into details, legal language, benchmark specifications, resource allocation. By 6 o'clock, preliminary agreements were drafted and signed. When everyone departed, Michael found himself alone with Victoria in the conference room. The white peonies were wilting petals browning at edges. We did it, Victoria said. We actually did it. We started it. 60 days to prove we can finish. She turned to him. 3 years I had you right there. I keep thinking about all the ways this could have gone differently if I'd just paid attention. The past doesn't change, only the future does. I want to change more than just the company. Victoria's words came slowly. I called Emma this morning. Really talked to her. She said she's been afraid to tell me things because I always seem too busy to care. What did you tell her? That I'm learning to care about the right things. Victoria smiled sadly. She asked if she could visit next weekend. First time in 2 years. Michael thought about Sarah's text that morning, full of pride. About his mother counting remaining months in single digits. The work doesn't matter if the people we love don't know we're fighting for them. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Board wants final debrief at 9 tomorrow. Then you're taking the rest of the week off. That's an order. Michael smiled. 3 years she'd ordered him around about dry cleaning. Now she was ordering him to rest. His phone buzzed. Sarah, Dad. I told my study group about you. One of my friend's dad got laid off as driving Uber. I gave her your number. Hope that's okay. Michael stared at the message. 3 years of invisibility, and now his daughter was using him as an example of resilience. He texted back. Of course it's okay. Tell your friend I'm happy to talk. Another buzz. James Torres from the board. Michael, I did research this afternoon. Called contacts at State. They said you were the best interpreter in the building. Would you consult on some of my portfolio companies? Michael typed. Let's finish this merger first. Then we'll talk. He left Apex headquarters and took the subway to Queens to the care facility where his mother lay counting her final months. Grace was awake reading. She smiled when he entered. "Did you do it?" "We did it. Signed preliminary agreements. Full merger pending 60-day benchmarks." Michael pulled the chair close. "Nakamura Takeshi flew from Tokyo just to witness it. He said Dad would be proud." Grace's smile was radiant despite her pallor. "Robert always said bridges built in darkness still stand when the sun rises. Took you 3 years to see the sun again, but you never stopped building. I wanted to quit so many times. But you didn't. That's what matters." She reached for his hand. "Sarah called. She's so proud she can barely talk without crying." Michael's throat tightened. "I'm just doing the work I was trained to do." "You're doing the work you were born to do." Grace's grip was weak but firm. "Promise me don't waste another day being smaller than you are." "I promise." They sat together as evening deepened, talking about Robert, about Tokyo, about bridges their fathers built. Finally, her eyes grew heavy. "I'm tired, sweetheart. But it's good tired. Peaceful." Michael stayed until she drifted into sleep, her breathing steady with oxygen's help. Then he walked out into Queen's night and headed home. Tomorrow would bring implementation challenges. 60 days to prove the partnership worked. But tonight, Michael Carson went home to his small apartment and slept the sleep of someone who'd stopped being invisible and started being essential. The bridges weren't finished, but he was building again, and that made all the difference. Saturday morning, 6:15 a.m. Michael stood in his Queens apartment bathroom staring at his reflection in the mirror. The man looking back had aged a decade in 48 hours. New lines bracketing his mouth, shadows beneath his eyes that 3 hours of sleep hadn't erased. But his hands were steady as he knotted his tie, and his mind was clear in the way it only got when everything important converged on a single point. Today was the board presentation. 9 a.m. Final approval for the merger structure before moving into implementation phase. 60 days to prove the partnership could work. 60 days to save 170 jobs, Sarah's medical school future, his mother's remaining months. No pressure. His phone showed 2 texts. First from Sarah, sent at 11:47 p.m. Dad. "I can't stop thinking about how you're back doing what you were meant to do. Grandma told me everything about State Department, about the layoff, about the 3 years driving. I never knew. I'm so proud of you I could explode. Show them what you're made of today." Second from Victoria, sent at 5:52 a.m. board presentation at 9. Full implementation team meeting at 11. Takahashi and Singh both want progress updates by end of week. Coffee's on me. See you at 8. Michael texted Sarah back. "Love you. Focus on your studies. I'll call after the presentation." To Victoria. "See you at 8. We've got this." He put on the charcoal gray suit, his own from State Department days, not borrowed. The fabric still fit perfectly tailored for a version of himself he'd thought was dead. Maybe that version had just been sleeping. The subway was quieter on Saturday morning. Michael found a seat, pulled out his tablet, reviewed the presentation one more time. Implementation timeline, resource allocation, benchmark specifications. The technical architecture that would prove Apex's AI platform could integrate with Singh's distribution network and Takahashi's manufacturing capabilities. His phone rang. Unknown number, New York area code. "This is Michael Carson." "Mr. Carson, this is Dr. Patricia Wells from Johns Hopkins Oncology." Her voice was professionally gentle in a way that made his stomach drop. "I'm calling about your mother, Grace Carson." Michael's world contracted to the sound of his own heartbeat. "Is she?" "She's stable, but we had an incident early this morning. She fell trying to get to the bathroom. No broken bones, but we're very concerned about her overall decline." Dr. Wells paused. Mr. Carson, I think it's time we discussed transitioning to hospice care. Hospice. The word hit like a fist to the solar plexus. Hospice meant giving up on treatment, managing pain instead of fighting the disease. Hospice meant weeks, maybe months if they were lucky. I understand. Michael's voice came from somewhere far away. What are the options? Dr. Wells outlined them with professional compassion. In-home hospice if he could arrange 24-hour care. Facility-based if not. Costs ranging from $4,000 to $8,000 monthly depending on level of care. And of course, they'd need to settle the outstanding balance on her current treatment before making any transitions. $14,000, plus whatever hospice would cost going forward, plus Sarah's next semester tuition in 3 weeks. I'll need a few days to arrange things, Michael heard himself say. Of course, but Mr. Carson, I should tell you in my professional opinion, your mother has perhaps 2 to 4 months. I'm very sorry. He thanked her, ended the call, sat on the subway as it rattled through tunnels beneath Queens, and felt the walls of his carefully constructed life begin to crack. The subway pulled into his stop. Michael climbed stairs into Manhattan morning, the city already alive despite the early hour. Saturday in New York meant different energy tourists and brunch seekers instead of commuters, but still the relentless forward motion of 8 million people refusing to stand still. He walked the 6 blocks to Apex headquarters, using the time to compartmentalize. His mother's decline was real and urgent and heartbreaking. But the board presentation was in 2 hours and 43 minutes, and 170 people needed him focused. He could grieve later. Right now, he needed to perform. Victoria was waiting in her office with 2 cups of expensive coffee and the determined expression of someone who'd decided that failure was not an option. "You look like hell," she said, handing him a cup. "Didn't sleep much. You gitty. Maybe an hour." She gestured to the presentation materials spread across her desk. "I've been running numbers since 4 a.m. Marcus thinks we're insane trying to hit these benchmarks in 60 days. David thinks the technical integration alone will take 90. Lisa thinks our messaging strategy isn't aggressive enough to compete with Vertex's PR machine." "What do you think?" Victoria looked at him with eyes that had learned something in the past 48 hours. "I think we have the right person leading this. And I think if we trust each other and execute perfectly, we might actually pull off something impossible. Might isn't good enough for the board. Then we'd better make it certain." She pulled up the presentation on her laptop. "Walk me through it one more time. Pretend I'm Gerald Whitmore looking for reasons to say no." For the next 90 minutes, they rehearsed. Michael presented, Victoria attacked with the board's likely objections. Michael refined his responses. By 8:45, they'd polished the presentation until it gleamed. "Ready?" Victoria asked. Michael thought about his mother lying in a hospital bed, counting her remaining months. About Sarah studying at Johns Hopkins, believing her father was someone worth being proud of. About 3 years of invisibility and the improbable chance he'd been given to matter again. "Ready." The boardroom filled at 8:52. Gerald Whitmore took his position at the head of the table with the same expression he'd worn 2 days ago. Cautious optimism wrapped in skepticism. Patricia Morrison sat to his right, tablet already open, probably running financial models in real time. James Torres, the tech entrepreneur, looked more relaxed than the others. He'd done his research on Michael, made his peace with the unconventional choice. 10 faces total. 10 people whose vote would determine whether the next 60 days meant salvation or collapse. Victoria opened. "Thank you all for being here on a Saturday morning. I know this is unusual, but the timeline we're working with doesn't respect weekends." She gestured to Michael. "Michael Carson will walk you through the implementation plan. I'll handle questions about financial implications." Michael stood, connected his laptop to the room's display system, and brought up the first slide. 60 days from today, this merger either becomes permanent or it dissolves. Everything depends on meeting 3 benchmarks. He clicked to the next slide, showing the targets in stark terms. Benchmark 1, technology integration. Apex's AI platform must demonstrate 30% improvement in processing speed when integrated with SingTech's cloud infrastructure. We're currently at 22% in laboratory conditions. The challenge is replicating that in production environments across 3 countries simultaneously. Patricia Morrison leaned forward. What's your confidence level on hitting 30%, 75% if everything goes according to plan? 90% if we get Sing's Mumbai team embedded with our engineers starting Monday. Michael met her eyes. That's why the accelerated timeline matters. Every day we wait, we lose momentum. And if you hit 28% instead of 30, Whitmore asked, then we renegotiate or we fail. There's no partial credit. Michael's honesty was calculated. The board would respect truth more than optimistic projections. But I've spent the last 48 hours reviewing our technical architecture with David Park and Andrea Walsh. The capability is there. It's just about execution. He clicked to the next slide. Benchmark 2 manufacturing quality. Takahashi Corporation must produce beta units at 95% quality standards using our integrated design specifications. They're currently at 89% with their existing processes. James Torres spoke up. 6 percentage points in 60 days. That's asking for miracles. It's asking for what Takahashi does better than any one iterative improvement through disciplined process. Michael pulled up data he'd gotten from Tanaka yesterday. Their quality metrics over the past 5 years show they can improve 4 to 6% in 90-day cycles when properly motivated. We're compressing the timeline but not asking for anything beyond their demonstrated capabilities. Motivated by what? Torres pressed. By the same thing that motivated Takahashi Ichiro to work with my father 70 years ago, the belief that partnership with Americans who respect their expertise can create something neither side could build alone. Michael let that land. Nakamura Takeshi flew 8,000 miles to witness yesterday's negotiation because he wanted to see if we deserve that belief. We convinced him we do. Now we have to prove it. The board absorbed this. Michael could see the calculation happening behind their eyes, weighing risk against potential sentiment against strategy. He clicked to the final benchmark slide. Benchmark 3 market adoption. Combined pilot programs in India, Indonesia, and Brazil must show user adoption rates above industry baseline. That means getting real users in low bandwidth environments to actually choose our platform over established competitors. What's the baseline? Morrison asked. 12% adoption in first 30 days for new technology platforms in emerging markets. We need to hit 15% to meet benchmark 18% to prove we've created something genuinely differentiated. Michael pulled up market research. SingTech's distribution network gives us access to user bases we couldn't reach otherwise. Apex's edge computing capabilities give those users functionality they can't get from competitors. It's a genuine value proposition, not just marketing. Whitmore studied the slides in silence for a long moment. Then, Mr. Carson walked me through worst-case scenario. It's day 59, we've missed 2 of 3 benchmarks. What happens? Michael had prepared for this question. Either party can exit the partnership with minimal penalty. Apex keeps whatever IP we've developed jointly, but we lose access to Sing's distribution and Takahashi's manufacturing. We're back where we started, except we've burned 60 days of cash and momentum. He paused. At that point, bankruptcy becomes inevitable within 30 days. And best case scenario, we hit all 3 benchmarks. The partnership converts to full merger. Apex gets immediate access to markets worth an estimated $2.3 billion over 5 years. SingTech gets technology that opens rural India and Southeast Asia in ways their current platform can't. Takahashi gets diversification into AI applications that protect them from commodity manufacturing decline. Michael's pulse was steady. Everyone wins, but only if we execute perfectly. Patricia Morrison was typing rapidly on her tablet. I'm running the numbers in real time. Even in best-case Apex's cash flow is tight through the 60-day period. You're burning approximately $1.2 million monthly. That gives you 70 days of runway, not 90. Which is why we structured the partnership to include immediate resource sharing, Victoria interjected. Sing Tech is providing cloud infrastructure at cost starting Monday. Takahashi is covering manufacturing facility expenses for the beta units. Those cost reductions alone save us $400,000 monthly. We have the runway we need. The board exchanged glances. Michael could feel the decision crystallizing. Finally, Whitmore spoke. All in favor of approving the implementation plan as presented, say aye. 7 ayes. 2 abstentions, both from board members who'd abstained on Michael's promotion 2 days ago. 1. No Patricia Morrison, who believed in betting on certainties, not possibilities. Motion carries. Whitmore's tone suggested this was provisional approval pending results. Mr. Carson, Ms. Brennan, don't make us regret this. Board adjourned. The room emptied. Victoria exhaled slowly, shoulders dropping 2 inches. We're really doing this. We are. Michael loosened his tie. Now comes the hard part, actually delivering what we promised. His phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Wells, Mr. Carson. I forgot to mention your mother is asking for you. She's quite alert this morning. Might be a good time to visit if you're available. Michael showed the text to Victoria. She read it, and her expression softened. Go. Be with her. The implementation team meeting can start without you. I should be here, Michael. Victoria's voice was firm but kind. We have 60 days to save the company. You have maybe 60 days left with your mother. Don't waste them on a meeting I can handle alone. Go. He nodded, grabbed his jacket, headed for the elevator. The subway ride to Queens felt longer than usual, every stop a delay between here and there. Michael's mind kept cycling between the board presentation and Dr. Wells's words. 2 to 4 months. Maybe less if the decline accelerated. The care facility smelled like antiseptic and institutional food and the peculiar odor of places where people went to die slowly. Michael had been coming here for 18 months, and he still wasn't used to it. Grace was awake when he entered her room, propped up in bed with oxygen tubes at her nose. But her eyes were brighter than they'd been in weeks, and she smiled when she saw him. Michael, I heard you had a big meeting this morning. How did you... He stopped. Sarah called you. At 7 a.m. She was too excited to sleep. Grace's voice was weak but warm. She said her father is a superhero who saves companies with his words. I told her I've always known that. Michael pulled the chair close to her bed, took her hand. The bones felt impossibly fragile, like bird wings made of tissue paper. The doctor called. She said you fell. I'm clumsy. It happens. Grace waved it away. Tell me about the meeting. Did you convince them? Board approved the implementation plan. 7-1 vote with 2 abstentions. And the one who voted against, Patricia Morrison, venture capitalist. She only bets on sure things. Grace smiled. Then she's never built anything worth building. The best things in life require faith, not certainty. She squeezed his hand with what strength remained. Your father used to say that all the time. Faith in what could be, not just acceptance of what is. Dad had a lot of sayings. Because he was a builder. Builders need philosophy to sustain them when the work gets hard. Grace's eyes held his. The doctor wants to talk about hospice, doesn't she? Michael's throat tightened. How did you know? Because I'm dying, sweetheart, and I'm tired of pretending I'm not. Her voice was gentle, not bitter. I've had a good life. 76 years. A husband who loved me. A son who makes me proud. A granddaughter who's going to change the world. That's more than most people get. It's not enough for me. That's because you're still living. You get to be greedy with time. She smiled. But I'm ready, Michael. I've been ready for a while. I'm just waiting to make sure you're ready too. I'll never be ready to lose you. Then I'll rephrase. I'm waiting to make sure you're strong enough to keep building after I'm gone. Grace's grip tightened slightly. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't waste whatever time you have left being smaller than you are. The world needs what you can do. Not hidden away, but out where people can see. Her eyes were fierce despite her weakness. You've spent 3 years invisible. Don't spend another day that way. Not for me, not for anyone. Be as large as your capabilities allow. Michael's vision blurred. I promise. Good. Grace settled back against her pillows. Now tell me about this merger. All the details. I want to understand what you're building. For the next hour, Michael talked. About Takahashi and the photograph of their fathers. About Priya Singh and the cyber attack. About Nakamura flying from Tokyo to witness the negotiation. About the 60-day timeline and 3 benchmarks and the improbable coalition of Japanese manufacturing, Indian distribution, and American technology. Grace listened with the focus of someone trying to memorize every word. Occasionally, she asked questions that went straight to the heart of things, not about business mechanics, but about people, and trust, and why partnerships mattered. Finally, her eyes grew heavy. I'm tired now, but good tired, peaceful tired. Should I call the nurse? No, just sit with me a little longer. So he sat holding his mother's hand while she drifted into sleep, her breathing steady with the oxygen's assistance. The monitoring equipment beeped quiet reassurance that she was still here, still fighting, still choosing to stay as long as her body allowed. Michael's phone buzzed silently in his pocket. He ignored it. Whatever it was could wait, but after 10 minutes it buzzed again, then again. Finally he checked. 3 texts from Victoria. Implementation meeting went well. Team is energized. Takahashi just called. Kenji wants to fly his engineering team to New York Monday to start integration work. That's a good sign. Also, James Torres from the board just offered to invest personal capital in the merger. 5 item at favorable terms. He believes in what we're building. Michael stared at the messages. 48 hours ago, he'd been invisible. Now board members were investing personal capital in a plan he'd helped architect. He texted back, "That's excellent news. Accept Torres's offer. We'll need the capital cushion." Another text arrived, this one from Sarah Dad. "I just got the most amazing news. Johns Hopkins offered me a full scholarship for 4th year based on my research work. They said it's one of only 3 given annually. I don't have to worry about tuition anymore." Michael read the message 3 times, each word hitting like a revelation. The financial pressure that had been crushing him for 3 years, Sarah's tuition had just evaporated, not because of him, but because his daughter was extraordinary in her own right. He typed back, "Sarah, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you, I can barely breathe. You earned this. All of it." Her response was immediate. "I learned from the best. Love you, Dad." Grace stirred in her sleep, murmured something about Robert and Bridges. Michael squeezed her hand gently, and she settled. His phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. He answered quietly. "This is Michael." "Where are you?" Victoria's voice was tight with controlled excitement. "Still with my mother. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Priya Singh just called. She wants to accelerate the timeline move from 60 days to 45. She says if we can prove the technology integration faster, she can commit an additional $20 million in marketing spend to drive user adoption in India." Michael's mind raced through implications. That's a massive opportunity, but compressing timeline increases risk. If we fail harder. "I know, that's why I'm calling. I told her I needed to discuss with you before committing." Victoria paused. "What do you think?" 3 days ago, she would have made this decision alone. Now, she was asking his opinion. The shift felt seismic. "I think we take the risk," Michael said. 45 days of perfect execution is better than 60 days of adequate performance. And Singh's $20 million in marketing spend could push us from 15% adoption to 25%. That's not just meeting benchmark that's crushing it. "You're sure?" No, but I'm confident. There's a difference. Michael looked at his mother, sleeping peacefully. Sometimes you have to bet on possibility instead of certainty. That's how the best things get built. Okay, I'll call Singh back and accept. Victoria's voice softened. How's your mother? Sleeping? Peaceful? The doctor wants to transition her to hospice care. I'm so sorry, Michael. Me too. He paused. But she's ready. More ready than I am. She told me to stop being smaller than my capabilities allow. Sounds like a wise woman. The wisest I've ever known. They ended the call. Michael sat with his mother another 30 minutes until a nurse came to check vitals. Then he kissed Grace's forehead and left, walking out into afternoon sunlight that felt too bright for the gravity of everything changing. The subway ride back to Manhattan gave him time to think. 45 days instead of 60. 3 benchmarks that could make or break everything. A mother counting her final weeks. A daughter who'd just earned a full scholarship. A company betting its survival on his ability to bridge cultures and languages. And underneath it all, the simple truth that he was no longer invisible. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, Mr. Carson. This is Kenji Takahashi. My father asked me to reach out directly. I apologize for my skepticism during negotiations. You were right about partnership mattering more than perfect terms. I look forward to working with you. Respectfully, Kenji. Michael stared at the message. Kenji had fought hardest against the merger pushed for Mitsui, questioned every assumption. Now he was apologizing and committing to collaboration. He texted back Kenji-san, no apology necessary. Skepticism is healthy. It makes us sharper. I look forward to working with you as well. The subway pulled into his stop. Michael emerged into Manhattan evening, the city painted in gold and shadow by the descending sun. He walked toward Apex headquarters, thinking about the next 45 days and all they would require. His phone rang again. This time Nakamura Takeshi. Carson-san, I'm calling from the airport. My flight back to Tokyo leaves in 2 hours. Nakamura-san, thank you again for attending yesterday. Your presence made all the difference. I came because Hiroshi asked. I stayed because I saw something that reminded me why I believe in partnerships across cultures. The old man's voice was warm. Your father would be very proud of you, not just for saving this merger, but for how you did it. With respect, with patience, with understanding that business is always about people, not just transactions. I learned that from him. And now you'll teach it to the next generation. Kenji texted me an hour ago. He said working with you has already changed how he thinks about partnership. Nakamura paused. That's the real victory, Carson-san. Not the merger itself, but the example you've set for those who come after. They talked for another 10 minutes about Robert Sterling and Takahashi Ichiro, about bridges built 70 years ago that still stood, about the responsibility of carrying forward what previous generations started. When the call ended, Michael felt the weight of legacy settling on his shoulders. Not crushing, but grounding. A reminder that the work mattered beyond the immediate stakes. He reached Apex headquarters at 6:47 p.m. The building was mostly empty on Saturday evening, but lights still glowed on the executive floor. Victoria's office, probably, and the conference rooms where implementation teams were already starting weekend work to prepare for Monday's sprint. Michael took the elevator up, found Victoria exactly where he expected, at her desk surrounded by documents, coffee cup empty beside her laptop. You're still here, he said from the doorway. She looked up, smiled tiredly. So are you. I thought you were spending the evening with your mother. She was sleeping. The nurse suggested I let her rest. Michael entered the office, settled into the chair across from her desk. Besides, I wanted to check in. Make sure accepting Singh's accelerated timeline didn't create problems I need to help solve. Always working. But Victoria's tone was affectionate, not critical. Actually, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to talk about something that's not business. Okay. She pulled up a photo on her phone, showed it to him. A teenage girl with Victoria's blonde hair and intelligent eyes smiling at the camera from what looked like a boarding school campus. Emma, my daughter. She's visiting next weekend. First time in almost 2 years she's actually wanted to come home. Victoria's voice held wonder and fear in equal measure. I don't know how to talk to her anymore, Michael. I don't know how to be her mother instead of just the CEO who happens to have a daughter. Michael thought about Sarah, about the easy warmth between them, despite 3 years of lies about his work. You start by being honest about who you are, what you've learned, what you're trying to become. Kids can forgive almost anything except continued dishonesty. What if she doesn't forgive me for the past 2 years? Then you keep showing up anyway, keep trying, keep being present even when it's uncomfortable. He leaned forward. Victoria, you've spent the past 48 hours learning how to be vulnerable in business. Apply the same principle to family. Let Emma see you're trying to change. She absorbed this, then nodded slowly. I called her this afternoon. Really called her, not just the usual Sunday check-in. We talked for 40 minutes. She told me about a boy she likes, about her best friend's drama, about how she's thinking of applying to Columbia like I did. Victoria's eyes were bright. All these things I didn't know because I never asked. I just assumed she'd tell me if it was important. But kids need to be invited to share, not just allowed. Exactly. Victoria set down her phone. Anyway, thank you for the advice, for the example. Watching you with your mother today, even just the way you talk about Grace and Sarah, it reminded me what I've been missing. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Victoria asked the question Michael had been expecting. What happens when your mother dies? Are you going to be okay? Michael considered the question honestly. I don't know. Probably not at first. Grace is the last connection I have to my father, to that whole part of my life before everything changed. When she's gone, I'll be the only one left who remembers Robert Sterling building bridges in Tokyo, who remembers the man I was trained to become. You're becoming that man again. I'm becoming a version of him. But it's different now. Older. More scarred. Less idealistic about how the world works. Michael smiled sadly. But maybe that's not entirely bad. Maybe the second version is wiser than the first would have been. Victoria walked to her window overlooking Manhattan. The city glittered in the gathering dusk, millions of lights against darkness. I've been thinking about what happens after the 45 days, she said. Assuming we succeed. Assuming the merger goes through and Apex becomes part of something larger. And I think I want you to be president of the combined company. She turned to face him. Not VP of International Relations. Not senior advisor. President. The person running day-to-day operations while I focus on long-term strategy as CEO. Michael's breath caught. Victoria. You've proven in 48 hours that you can lead, that people trust you, that you can bridge gaps I don't even see until they've already created problems. Her voice was firm. I need someone like that beside me. Not behind me, beside me. Partner, not subordinate. That's a massive responsibility. You've been handling massive responsibilities for 2 decades. The only difference is now you'll get the title and compensation that match. Victoria smiled. Think about it. You don't have to answer now, but I wanted you to know I'm serious about rebuilding this company into something worth being proud of, and I can't do that without you. Michael's phone buzzed. A text from the care facility. Mr. Carson, your mother is asking for you again. She's very alert and would like to see you if possible. He showed Victoria the text. She nodded immediately. Go. Family first. We'll talk more tomorrow. Michael took the subway back to Queens one more time, watching the city slide past through scratched windows. President of a merged company. The kind of role he'd never imagined possible 3 days ago. The kind of future that felt both thrilling and terrifying. Grace was awake when he arrived, sitting up in bed with remarkable energy for someone who'd been declining so rapidly. "You came back," she said. "You called. I came." He settled into the chair, took her hand. "What's on your mind, Mom?" "Everything. Nothing. The way thoughts get when you know time is short." Grace's eyes were clear-focused. "I've been thinking about your father, about the bridges he built, about what he'd say if he could see you now." "What would he say?" "He'd say he's proud. But he'd also remind you that bridges aren't just about connecting two sides. They're about creating space for people to meet in the middle on neutral ground where neither side has to give up who they are." Grace squeezed his hand. "That's what you did yesterday with Takahashi and Singh. You created space where Japanese tradition and Indian pragmatism and American innovation could meet without anyone feeling diminished. I just translated. Facilitated. You built a bridge, Michael. The same way your father did. The same way you've been doing your whole life, even when no one was watching." Her voice grew softer. "That's your gift. Not languages, not diplomacy, but the ability to see what connects people instead of what divides them." Michael's throat tightened. "I don't want to lose you. I know. And I don't want to leave. But that's not how this works." Grace smiled gently. "So instead of wishing for more time, let's use the time we have. Tell me about the next 45 days. Tell me everything you're going to build." For the next 2 hours they talked. About implementation timelines and technical benchmarks and market adoption strategies. About Kenji's apology text and Singh's accelerated schedule and Victoria's offer of the presidency. About Sarah's scholarship and Emma's upcoming visit and all the small miracles that had emerged from 48 hours of transformation. Grace listened with fierce attention, asking questions, offering observations that came from 7 decades of watching people succeed and fail at the things that mattered. Finally, around 10 p.m., her energy began to fade. "I'm tired now, sweetheart. Real tired. I'll let you sleep." "Michael." She held his hand tighter. "I need you to know something. Whatever time I have left, days, weeks, months, I'm not afraid. I've made my peace, and the only thing that could make me rest uneasy is worrying about whether you'll be okay after I'm gone." "I'll be okay. Promise me. Promise me you won't let grief make you small again. Promise me you'll keep building bridges, keep being large, keep mattering in the world." "I promise." Michael's voice was rough. "I promise I won't waste what you and Dad gave me." Grace smiled, closed her eyes. "Then I can rest. Finally rest." Michael stayed until her breathing deepened into sleep. Then he kissed her forehead and left, walking out into Queen's night with the weight of promises and possibilities in equal measure. His phone showed 4 texts waiting. From Sarah, "Dad, good night. Love you to the moon and back. From Victoria, implementation teams are ready for Monday. We're going to do this. From Kenji, Takahashi engineering team confirmed for Monday arrival. Looking forward to collaboration. From James Torres, Michael, my 5 Yelmos is wired. But I want in on whatever you build next, too. You're the real deal." Michael stood on the sidewalk outside the care facility, looking up at the window of his mother's room. A light still glowed there, the nurse checking vitals probably, making sure Grace was comfortable through the night. 45 days to prove the merger could work. Perhaps 60 days left with his mother, a future opening up that he'd thought was closed forever. And underneath it all, the simple truth that being seen, truly seen, changed everything. The subway ride home was quiet. Michael sat alone in the car, reviewing the past 72 hours like a man checking a map, to make sure he was actually on the path he thought he was on. Thursday morning, invisible driver. Thursday afternoon, revealed capability. Friday, negotiated with Singh, prevented cyber attack, gained respect. Saturday, won board approval, received presidency offer, made promises to dying mother. And now Saturday night, heading home to sleep before the real work began. His phone buzzed one final time. A text from Nakamura sent from Tokyo where it was already Sunday afternoon. Carson-san, I forgot to tell you something yesterday. Your father once said to mine, the bridges we build in darkness still stand when the sun rises. I thought of that watching you work. Your sun is rising. Make sure the bridges you build now are strong enough to last generations. Michael read the text 3 times, each reading adding weight to what it meant. Then he typed back, thank you, Nakamura-san. I'll do my best to honor both our father's legacies. The subway pulled into his stop. Michael walked the 2 blocks to his apartment building, climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, unlocked his door. The apartment was exactly as he'd left it that morning, small, tidy, organized. But it felt different now, not a hiding place anymore, just a place where he happened to sleep between building bridges. He set his phone on the nightstand, saw the time, 11:47 p.m. In 45 days, he'd know if everything they'd built would stand or collapse. In some unknowable number of days, his mother would take her last breath. In the immediate future, Sarah would become a doctor, and Emma would reconnect with her mother, and Kenji would learn to trust Americans the way his grandfather had. And Michael Carson, 54 years old, formerly invisible, would keep building bridges, because that's what his father had taught him to do. He set his alarm for 5:30 a.m. Monday's sprint started early. Then he turned off the light and let sleep take him, dreaming of bridges that spanned impossible distances and held firm against every weight placed upon them. The darkness didn't frighten him anymore, because he'd learned what his mother and father had always known: the bridges you build in darkness still stand when the sun rises. And his sun was finally rising again.